Welcome to Wisdom and Wealth, where we talk about the human side of money. Join us as we dive beyond the numbers, unpacking the psychology of money to equip you with the tools you need to be wise in wealth.
I'm Frazier, Chief Behavioral Officer at RFG Advisory. And most retirees, they've spent their entire life working hard, saving diligently, doing everything right to be able to get to the point where they can retire. And so why, now that you're at that point, does it feel so wrong to actually spend the money that you've been saving for the last 20, 30, 40 years? And I want to say this first and foremost, if that's you, if you find yourself in that position, you're not alone. This is a very common challenge that many retirees face. They have more than enough saved up, and yet they still struggle to enjoy it. The truth is that we spend so much time, too much time, worried about running out of money in retirement, and we don't spend near enough time worried about running out of life. The thing you have to understand is that this is a real psychological phenomenon. In fact, there was a Morningstar study that was done that showed that around 80% of retirees underspend relative to what they could actually safely enjoy. Retirees in general have an underspending problem, not an overspending, but an underspending problem. Why is that? One of the reasons is because our brains were wired to save. They were built to save and not to spend. And for decades, you've been taught to defer gratification. You've been rewarded for saving up, and you have an identity around saving. And now, all of a sudden, just because you're retired, you're asked to flip that entire script overnight, and it just doesn't come naturally. Let me tell you a story about Jim and Carol. Jim and Carol, a number of years ago, they sat down and they finally were able to retire, a moment that they had been building up to for 30 years. And when they finally got to that point, the point they had been building up to for 30 years, they had saved just over $1 million. They had dreamed of getting to this day and to this point because their plans were, once they got there, that they were going to start taking their kids and their grandkids on a trip to Italy. That's what they had talked about for most of 30 years, is once they retire, they're finally going to be able to have the time to take their family on this trip. But with every year that would pass, every time that they got close to actually booking the trip, they couldn't actually pull the trigger. They would freeze up. They couldn't actually spend the money to do the things that they had dreamt of doing for the last 30 years. Jim would always say, well, what if I need that money later? What if we need it at a point later on in our life? Maybe not now, but when we're 80 or 85 or 90 years old. And even though Jim had seen the numbers over and over again, showing him that it was okay to take this Italy trip, every time he would go to do it, he would be struck by fear. And that money that he worked so hard for, it gave him freedom, but his mindset kept him stuck, kept him from being able to do the things that he's wanted to do for the majority of his life. So what do we do about this? First and foremost, we need to reframe retirement spending. It's not about spending down your savings. We need to think of it as a way to activate your purpose. You accumulated that money not to spend it down, but to activate your purpose, to create memories and experiences with your loved ones and your family and your friends. So think of it like this. Just as important as your return on your investment is your return on life. What are the memories, the experiences, or the values that you want to live out while you can? Mark Twain said that 20 years from now, you'll regret more the things that you didn't do than the things that you did do. Here's a question to ask yourself. What will your future self wish you had done while you still could, while you still had the health to be able to do it? Finally, let's talk about what we can do about this. What are some of the things we can do? What are some of the actions that we can take to shift from saving to spending and activate your purpose? 3 things to know. Number 1, you can label your accounts. If you're struggling to spend your money and you really want to, you know you can, but you're having a hard time separating yourself from it, you can open an account with the sole purpose of doing the thing that you want it to do, and you name it that way. So for Jim and Carol, they would open a new account, they would fund it with the money they needed to take their vacation, and they would call it the Italy trip. You could have a grandkid adventure fund. You could have a fun bucket. Something that tells you that you have the freedom to spend this money and you're spending it for that specific purpose. Here's a second thing you can do. You can automate a paycheck into these accounts. So you can go in and set up a regular distribution to occur that goes from your retirement savings account into the accounts that you want to use for things like the Italy trip and grandkids adventures and the fun bucket. What you're doing is you're taking yourself out of the equation. You're automating it so that you don't have the opportunity or the ability to step in like Jim and Carol did and freeze and not pull the trigger. It's happening for you without you having the ability to step in and say no. Number 3, spend in phases. Or said differently, start small. If the idea of spending more money creates a lot of anxiety, you don't have to just go and take an Italy vacation right out of the gate to get yourself to spend more. You can do small things, like take a weekend trip. Buy the thing that you want that you've been putting off, that you may buy it, but it's not gonna put a dent in your savings. In other words, you wanna start building the spending muscle. You've spent your entire life saving up your money, and now it's time to start using it to live. If nothing else, I want to reintroduce a concept that we talked about back in episode 9. It's the reality that you only get to use your money in one of 2 ways. You're either going to use it to live or to give. Those are the only outcomes of money. Every dollar in your account will be used to live or to give, and if you don't spend it, somebody else will. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you want to give money to the people and the causes that you care about, you should do that. It's okay to give money. The point is to make sure that it's an intentional decision rather than defaulting to the safe one. As always, if you have any questions, if you want to discuss further, reach out, contact your financial advisor. And until next time, stay wise and well.